All right, so the third theme that we get to look at is this idea of region. Again, we see this question, or a themed question, how are places similar or different? That's the essence of a region. For something to be considered a region, there has to be something in common with either the people or the physical geography there, or probably both. So when we see this thing that says a region is an area of Earth distinguished by a distinctive combination of cultural and physical characteristics, that's exactly what it's saying, is that they have similar physical features and the people have something in common as well. There's three different types of regions. There's formal, there's functional, and there's perceptual. So let's look at each one. A formal region, it states, is an area within which everyone shares in common one or more distinctive characteristics. That's kind of vague. So here's the thing. A formal region is, it can be big, it can be small. The way I describe a formal region is this. You have to know where it starts and where it stops, and the people have to have something in common. So for example, would the United States be considered a formal region? Absolutely, because you know where it starts and where it stops. There's a boundary there. You know when you're entering the U.S. and you know when you're exiting the U.S. And if nothing more than the people living in this area are citizens of the United States, there's a formal region. We know that the U.S. is the most ethnically diverse country in the entire world, yet the commonality is you're citizens of the United States. It can be big like that. It can be small like the state of Georgia. You know where it starts, you know where it stops. It can be smaller than that. Cobb County, you know where it starts and stops. Marietta City, you know where it starts and stops. It has a delineated boundary. Okay? So some examples of some formal regions when you look at them, U.S. and Canada. It's kind of funny we throw Canada in there, right? Well, we call that Anglo-America because we know where it starts and stops. We also know the U.S. and Canada share multiple physical features. Side note, you need to be looking at your Anglo-America maps and taking those quizzes online. Either way, we're talking about sharing things like the Great Plains, the Appalachian Mountains, the Great Lakes, the Rocky Mountains, and then culturally, English-speaking for the most part, except for Quebec, okay, as well as the dominant religion is Christianity. That's a formal region. A lot of commonalities there. Same thing if you look at the Middle East, Southwest Asia, the Middle East, we're talking about all the way from the Saudi Arabian Peninsula into North Africa. What's the common climate? Desert. It's a huge desert region. But guess what? It's desert and it's dominated by Islam. That's a formal region in those areas. We see two maps here. These are both considered formal regions. One has bigger formal regions, one has smaller. However, they're still formal regions, statewide versus voting district-wide. What we also see is something called the scale of inquiry, which will not be on your test. But what it's showing you is that this map is more accurate than this map because you're more zoomed in, you're looking at more intricate details. Okay, this is more of a macro scale, this is more of a micro scale. Functional regions are different than formal regions. A functional region, it says, is characterized around a node or a hub. This can be a little bit tricky because a city can be a formal and a functional region. And here's what I mean by that. You know when you enter the Atlanta city limits, that makes it a formal region. However, Metro Atlanta, all the surrounding areas of Atlanta that are attracted to it, is a functional region. So let me back up here for a second. Right now, you're at your house. Most of you are probably in Hillgrove District. There may be a few of you that aren't, but what you do know is that there are 3 Krogers. Everybody's a Kroger shopper today, no public shoppers. There's 3 Krogers in Hillgrove District. There's the one near McEachern, right there at Lost Mountain and Macklin Road. There's the one across from the Avenues, and there's the one near John Ward Road. If you were sitting at your house right now, and your parents said go to the store, assuming that you could drive, you would go to one of those 3 Krogers. And the one you would go to is based off how close you are to it. That's a functional region. There's no starting and stopping point that says you have to go to this Kroger or that Kroger, you have to go to this Chick-fil-A versus that Chick-fil-A. It's part of the functional region that you're in. So most people in these areas are attracted to Atlanta because that's the closest big city there is. The farther away you get from Atlanta, the more you're attracted to, maybe it's Chattanooga, or over here it's Birmingham, or down here maybe it's Savannah or Jacksonville, or up here it's Charlotte. But that's why the phrase that it's characterized by a hub or a node. Atlanta is the hub or the node in this capacity. So a city can be both functional and it can be formal at the exact same time. And you see some examples: radio stations, newspapers. You know, you don't have to live in Marietta to get the MDJ. You can live in Powder Springs or different areas. It's the area that it's being serviced. The last type of region is what is called a perceptual region. This says vernacular. Y'all can just remember perceptual, no big deal. But the root term of perceptual is your perception of an area. It says it's a region in which people perceive the characteristics, although sometimes they can be disagreed upon. In other words, it's your perception of an area. Two different maps here, both of the southeast United States, but we have two different people's interpretations. One would include West Virginia and Kentucky and Arkansas and Virginia. Maybe you think those are part of the Southeast, maybe you don't. Or over here, they don't include North or South Carolina. Louisiana is not involved. Like, maybe you agree with that, maybe you don't. Or maybe you have a different interpretation. But that's the idea of a perceptual region, is it can change from person to person. One thing I do want you to put down, though, is that perceptual regions have the ability to create stereotypes. At the AP level, we have a textbook, and inside that textbook, they state that the South, which is where we live in the South, is characterized by high cotton production, low graduation rates, high rates of obesity, and high membership in the Baptist Church. So essentially what they're stating is that the vast majority of people would be overweight cotton farmers that did not graduate from high school but attended church on Sundays. Now, that may be true for a small percentage of the population, but we know that it's not true for the vast majority of people living in Georgia. Parts of that may be true, and parts of it may not be. And so it's an outsider's perspective into an area and how they perceive a region. And that would be what a perceptual region is about. So when we look at this map, the United Countries of Baseball, which of those three categories or which of those types of regions do you think is most present here? Is it formal? Is it functional? Or is it perceptual? Go ahead and pause this screen. I want you to think about that for a minute. And then when you unpause, I'll give you the answer. All right, so here's the answer. Best answer is perceptual. This is an artist's interpretation of what they would think the United Countries of Baseball would look like. There is no fact to back this up. This is one person's perception, one person's opinion of what that would look like. And so this would not be a true formal region. It would be considered a perceptual region. And we'll stop there and pick back up with theme number 4 at our next meeting.